how to deal with it. And then the next thing, which is very, very recent, which is probably the most stressful thing I've dealt with in a while, is this, which is a rebrand. The original logo is the one on the left, and that is the one that I came up with, or the type mark that I came up with when I was on Basecamp. And I basically went ahead and I put a trademark application in. And I'd done some research. Everyone says do some research before you do a trademark application. And I did a bit of research and I thought, oh, well, they're not the same. Like, people aren't going to worry about that. I then, you have 2 months in which anyone can propose, what do they call it? Opposition. So they can propose an opposition against your trademark or the design you're using. And on the very last day of that 2 months, I got a letter from a lawyer based in London representing an American firm who decided that it was too similar to theirs. And I'm not going to name names, but it is what it is. And it basically threw me off completely because I'm thinking, well, what do I do? Like, I can't afford to fight a legal battle. If I lose, I have to pay all of the legal fees on their side. It's just something I don't really want to deal with. All I want to do is embroider clothing. Like, I don't want to have to deal with this. Luckily, I knew someone who was a trademark lawyer. They looked into it for me, and this was more out of desperation than anything. And they told me that I would lose if they did propose opposition. So I was like, fine, let's rebrand, which actually I used as a way to spin into a positive for me. So I got to rethink my logo and like how we're going to do it. So the thing they were opposing was the use of the words black dog on clothing. So we've changed that to BDEQ, which is the abbreviation. And then weirdly, through a fluke, I found that the 3 C's that I represent here are internal within the B, D, E, and the Q, which I've then translated below into 3 lines and a C, which now goes onto my clothing. So I've come out with a really small abstract logo mark, which I can use on my clothing, which is great. But I've also rebranded, so that's not going to be a problem anymore. But it's one of those things that's like, you try and prepare and you try and do some research and some learning, and then you'll always figure out that actually it's far more complex than you think, and to try and get help where you can. So hopefully that bit was useful. And then I've got some general advice off the top of my head. If someone asked me, what do you think about post Basecamp things? I think, as with life, you have ebbs and flows within business, as well as like marketing, trends, that kind of thing. One day it could be super busy and you could be completely struggling to get things done. And the next minute you could be struggling to get work. So it's kind of like you're going to have these waves effectively. And again, it's just finding your consistent beat that you can just work at. The other thing is finding a third space or trying to get out of your house. I now work from home all the time. And as an extrovert, that is shocking on the health. So if you can get outside and work somewhere, find an office, work from a pub, work from a cafe, I think do it. Yeah, very, very important. Take nothing as a given. So this comes from another influencer I actually made some clothing for, in the hope that he would promote my brand. He had 500,000 followers, and I made him some clothing and did some other bits, and I didn't even get a shout out from it, and I was absolutely gutted because it was a lot of work. But the point is, I thought that he would just do it. I thought it was a given that it would just happen. He'd be happy. I think he actually thinks that I fanboyed him, and I got nothing out of it. So take nothing as a given. You can always tell them, I want to get this in return, or I'm looking for this, etc. Asking for help, again, sounds quite obvious, but sometimes your ego can get in the way and you're like, I should know how to do this. I don't want to admit that I don't know. Just ask people. People want to help you. Likewise for me, or with you guys, I'm going to put my contact details at the end of this. I think it's in the next slide. If you have any questions, just give me a shout, and I'll try and help you out in anything small business or mental health or anything. The next thing is meeting people that do similar things. You can become quite boring if you run a business on your own. I remember I had a few nights, I think someone said earlier that they had a night where they were waking up thinking about PPC. Is it PPC? PCC? I had 2 nights where I'd wake up thinking about whether I should be VAT registered or not. And it's so boring and it's so silly. And it's one of those things that when you don't have colleagues and then you meet a friend at the pub and they go, "How's your day going? How have you been?" You're like, "Oh, well, just thinking about VAT registration and I don't know what to do." It's very, very boring chat. So meet people that do similar things to you, find like a collective of small businesses or something like that. And you can talk to them about the very, very boring stuff and keep your friends your friends. Um, Next one's finding your unfair advantage. This comes from a book. They talk about the fact that we all have these things that we're really good at or are very, very unique to us as a person. How do you then apply that to a business and then absolutely own it, or apply it even at work when you're applying for job roles, for example? There's something about you that makes you you, and that can't be replicated by most people. And I think do lean into that and find out what that is that makes it totally unfair. There's an unfair advantage. Hopefully that makes sense. Finding comfort in the uncertainty. This is particularly one for business owners and freelancers. Um, like I said, with the ebbs and flows, you don't necessarily know what's going to come next. Nothing's certain. So it's how do you become comfortable with the fact that you're not 100% sure what's coming, but you are prepared for all sorts of events, all sorts of outcomes, and find a way to like be emotionally balanced about it as well, because it can feel quite daunting and quite intimidating when you're on your own, and all these things are going on and you don't know what's going to come next. So find a way to become comfortable with the uncertainty if you can. Continuous improvement. Kaizen is a Japanese term that we use in engineering for continuous improvement and saying that nothing is the finished product. It can always be better in some form or another. I heard someone refer to this as being in a permanent beta phase of a product or of a person or whatever. The idea being that there's always going to be little things that you can tweak. Like if you've got a product, just because you've started selling and it's doing quite well, it doesn't mean that there can't be things that could make it that 1% better. And finding that is super important, even in your personal life as well. And then the last one's a bit obvious, or it sounds obvious, it's harder to do, but is looking after yourself. It's really easy, especially what I found in a small business. I work far more hours now than I did when I was paid to work by an employer. It's easier to kind of overstretch your boundaries for your own business than it would be for someone else to ask you to work late. I was working till like 9 last night, just getting carried away with trying to do website stuff, and that's something I wouldn't have done for an employer. So you've just got to kind of make sure that you do look after yourself and make sure that you check in with yourself properly, and make sure your health is all good. That's pretty much it. So this is my, if you want to try and scan any of those, that's my Instagram, the clothing, which is the newest batch, and then the coaching on there. So the idea is with the coaching, you can book half an hour to just chat to me for free. Just book something in. If you want to talk about mental health, you want to talk about emotional intelligence, open up. You want to talk about business, just go through that. And then if you want to follow me on LinkedIn as well, it's there. If you do decide you want to buy some clothing, that'd be really cool. And there is a discount for anyone that is on the Basecamp course with Basecamp 10. So have a look, see if it's your kind of thing. Go on the Instagram. If anyone is pro at Instagram or social media, please give me some tips. I would love that. Just reach out and say hi, really.
Thanks,
Cool.
Chris.
Hopefully that wasn't too much information in one. And then if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
I've got a few questions myself, actually, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay, well, my first question was going to be to ask you how you are. Do you get asked that a lot since you started your business?
I do. A few people ask me that, yeah. I'm doing okay. It's like the moments with the trademark thing that things start to get a bit hairy, and you start questioning why you're doing it in the first place, and you've got to try and remember the real reason that you started the business. I also find that when you're doing things like marketing and you're doing things like accounts, you can really forget about the real value in the product that you're selling and that you're trying to help people with. So I'm okay. I'm good. I'm doing all right. it's nice to see so many faces actually, rather than like staring out the window. So yeah,
Yeah, a lot
thank
has
you.
changed actually since your cohort. Yeah, we've been a little bit more stricter with the videos as well. Because it
Okay,
obviously helps with engagement as well. Not just for, for everybody else, but the speakers as well.
for sure.
It looks like your life has changed a lot since you left Basecamp. Um, any
Yeah.
learnings at all? I know you mentioned some of them through your slides, but anything that pops up like that that you can share with everybody that has really helped you launch your business, I suppose, and do other things
Mm.
you need to do.
Any tips that I haven't said? I think one thing is that you're always going to be learning. It's like even when you finish Basecamp, you're going and doing it is different to learning it. And I think lean on all the resources, save everything that you do while you're doing your course. Also, the project is really helpful because you've got an opportunity to put together an entire business portfolio of marketing stuff and then talk to experts about it, uh, all within the course. So that's kind of what I did with this business. My final project was everything to do with this. So like brand guidelines, target markets, the website stuff, and then obviously went through that with some of the mentors as well. So I think use the resource that you've got within Basecamp while you've got it. It's really handy, and then save as much of it as you possibly can so you can refer to it later when you're fighting the battles.
Cool. We've got one hand raised here from Gemma.
Cool. Hello, Gemma.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think it's really amazing what you're doing for men's mental health. And I just wanted to ask, what site did you use to create your web? Like, did you design it yourself, your website?
Yeah, thank you for that. I also use Shopify because we did a Shopify run through as part of the website week. And then also Shopify, because it's e-commerce and you're selling, they just take care of everything. So I guess if you build with Squarespace or Wix or something like that, I'm not really sure how they work, but everything's kind of embedded within Shopify. And they also do a thing where you get your first 3 months for £1 a month, which is really handy because it gives you that chance to kind of launch and go through everything, build it. And then if you feel like, oh, this isn't for me, this isn't something I want to do, you haven't committed crazy amounts of capital to it, especially if it's a small business. So yeah, highly recommend Shopify actually. It's really good.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone
I've
else?
I've had a look at your website as well. So it looks like you're selling products and you're selling services as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you then how do you do your marketing for both of them?
That's actually a very good question. Because at the moment my Instagram has been, so most of it's been on social media. So a lot of my stuff came from LinkedIn and Instagram. TikTok, I'm not such a big fan of. I think it's because I don't use it so much personally that I don't really understand it. But the Instagram at the moment, it's kind of a mixture of mental health and clothing stuff, which I find kind of actually clashes a little bit. So it's hard to like talk about, mental health problems and issues and how to get over those and topics like that, and then say, oh, also I've got clothing to sell. It doesn't, to me, it feels a bit like it clashes. So I'm actually going to be starting a second Instagram page and split the two because I find when it comes to coaching, if you look at most coaching brands at the moment or like coaches, they sell their personal brand a lot. And then anything else will go through the business. So go through like a side profile. And with me, it's the same. Like I want someone to see who I am and my face and hear me talking, and then they're more likely to come talk to me about mental health and that kind of thing than if it's just like a logo in the corner that doesn't look like a person. So that's what I found, and that's what I'm going to have to change. But again, like when you're doing it on your own, you've got to go through rebrand and all this stuff. Trying to find the time to do everything is quite difficult. So that's coming up.
So have you finally figured out your VAT situation?
Yeah.
Okay. So did you
Yes.
decide
Yeah.
to go for it then?
When not at the moment. So I learned a lot. I don't want to bore everyone here, but you can work out whether VAT works for you or not underneath a threshold amount of income. So for some businesses, it might not be worth your while. And actually, the money that you save in purchases doesn't really equate to the sales. Like, as in, you could have to add that 20% on to all the products that you sell, which means that all your prices go up, and you actually don't save that much money from the things you buy. So these are all the things I was thinking about. We're not doing it just yet. I'll do it when I'm forced to, I think.
Yeah. You've got your hand raised, Ray.
Hello.
Hey, I was wondering, where did you do the emotional intelligence course?
Yeah, so there's a few different things. I did a workshop with a group called the School of Life. So they've got a YouTube channel. They're really good. The founder of the School of Life was on Diary of a CEO podcast a few months ago. That was really like my entry point to it. I then did an emotional intelligence practitioner qualification with a group called the Priory Academy. And then I am now doing the Emotional Intelligence Master Practitioner Award, and I can't remember the name of the school off the top of my head, if I'm completely honest. But yeah, so working my way through those.
Amazing, thank you.
No worries. Hi,
We've
Nick.
got- yeah, and then we've got Nick.
Hi, Christopher. Thanks for the presentation. Sounds absolutely amazing. And congratulations as well, signing a good space for yourself as well. Really well done. I'm just wondering, because you've got two really incredibly good ideas for both the clothing that promotes male mental health, but also the counselling. Is there sort of future in sort of 5 years' time where it might be too much to be able to juggle both and have to choose one direction? Sort of going either the clothing sort of way or going the mental health way. Like what last year his old producing friends sort of launched an app called Metal, which is a male which is also dedicated to mental health for men, and it's an app that sort of gives tips on how to be able to cope and through physical exercise and that sort of stuff. And so putting that dedication and my work might sort of put the clothing brand on the the back burner, because or equivalently, if you want to concentrate like Plain Bear, who's done really well with their really nicely simplistic, beautifully designed sort of apparel.
Yeah.
They've gone full on because they've had their time. So is there a fear that over in 5 years' time that they might have to choose one path, or how are
Yeah.
you sort of dealing with that sort of your plan in 5 years' time?
I think so. I've had a few 5 years plans in the last month or so. And I think at the moment I'm just very much focusing on just making this work and making this stick and getting the traction. I think for the mental health side of things and the coaching, um, the bigger plan of that could be something like a platform to outsource mental health for businesses. Because at the moment, you have mental health forums and mental health groups within companies, but they're often run voluntarily by the people that work there, which means that you have this conflict of interest where people don't really necessarily want to open up or that kind of thing. So I was thinking of that and then becoming kind of like a platform for counselors and therapists to get in contact with businesses and kind of pair them up as a consultancy. So that's one aspect of that could go down. And then being a manufacturing engineer, my mind still works like that. So I'm always thinking of how to like change processes and make things more efficient and quicker and whatever, and outsourcing things. So at the moment I do everything myself. So all the labels are handmade, all the designs are handmade, everything apart from the actual t-shirt is made by me. That eventually could be something that I would then outsource those items to, or change them, or get an embroidery machine. And I think as long as I'd run them in parallel as long as I possibly could. And I think for me personally, there's more value in the mental health and the coaching side of things. I think that's going to have a bigger impact on the world than the clothing. The clothing's more about awareness.
Thanks for that. Any other questions, guys? Have you considered applying for grants or anything of the sort, Chris?
I haven't, to be honest. I might have a look into that now. No, I haven't done that. I will. I've written that down.
or even crowdfunding, because you're
Sorry,
missing
oh, like crowdfunding.
crowdfunding, yeah.
Yeah, that could be quite handy. I mean, I often think about the whole like marketing agency thing because I'd say like for the business and for what I do, my strengths lie more in the operations and the talks and that kind of thing. Whereas the marketing side of things, if I could outsource that, that's something I would rather outsource. Like I can understand it, but then trying to do it all at the same time is quite difficult. So maybe, yeah, like maybe crowdfunding that and trying to get some help with that could be quite good.
Are you registered as a limited company? Right, okay.
So
Things actually, if you're registered as a limited company, that at least you can take in interns, and obviously
Yeah.
you don't always have to pay interns. Sometimes they just
yeah,
the work experience, so it's a win-win for both. But I think you need to have to be a limited company to be able to do that. I've done that myself. That's all I'm
there
saying.
you go.
Yeah, because obviously I can't afford the staff yet. Yeah.
Yeah, that was another one of those sleepless night VAT things was whether to start a limited company or run as a sole trader. And then I think while I'm at the point I am where it is just me and trying to get traction and trying to make sure everything works out, the sole trader route was better for me. And then I think eventually then the limited company thing could be better. But yeah, it's quite interesting. I never thought about the intern thing before.
How do you do your pre-orders? Because that's how you're set up at the moment, right? When you take
Yeah,
in.
so at the moment.
Yeah.
So the pre-order thing is because I want to put in, I don't have minimum order quantities at the moment, but obviously the more I order in advance, the cheaper it gets. So that's really helpful for me. I also am working out of a flat and I don't really want to hold crazy amounts of stock. So it's kind of like small batch limited runs. I think for me at the moment, the pre-order thing is to try and gauge the popularity of things as well before like investing in all the stock in advance. So if the pre-orders, if I get enough pre-orders and we go ahead and people like the product and they want to shout about it and talk to their friends about it, then we can start actually holding stock and building as we go. But yeah, it's working out the whole like purchasing side of things and like logistics side of things as a whole task in itself as well.
You've got a question, Claudio? Claudio.
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
I'm wondering because you have a whole clothing brand, are the websites which use print on demand actually useful?
Sorry, what was that last bit? The print on demand?
Yeah, there's some websites which actually can make the clothes for you. They are called print on demand, and I was curious.
Okay.
Sorry, I just
So
muted myself by mistake.
sorry.
Are they useful, the print on demand website?
I've never used a print on demand. I think because all the designs on my clothing are embroidered. I think you can get embroider on demand kind of thing. So you can get wholesalers that will do embroidered designs for you. But obviously that increases the cost per part. And then also you can get minimum order quantities. So if you're trying to do 4 variations of 4 different colors. So for example, one design of a t-shirt in 4 different colors across 4 different like 6 different sizes, sorry, you've got a crazy amount of varieties that you need to then fulfill, and your minimum order quantities for each size can be something like 20 to 30, so you can start to spend crazy amounts of money just to fulfill and like a minimum stock. So that can be quite hard. So I do all the embroidery in house and haven't done any printing yet. No.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Any other questions before we let Chris go? So my very last question, Chris, is whereabouts from the Philippines are you?
That's a very good question. My mum is from north of Manila, somewhere north. I've only ever been once. I'm like incredibly British.
Bulacan or
Sorry?
Is it Bulacan?
I honestly don't know. I think the area, the town is called Novaliches.
Right, okay. So we might be neighbors then.
Oh, there you go. So that's where my Filipino side of the family are from. But I'm super English. I'm like the most English guy. I just happen to be a little bit tan. So yeah, we kind of just work with it as it goes. But yeah, so there you go, neighbors. That's good.
I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna say where I live in the Philippines, but I think there's likelihood that we're neighbors in the Philippines. We've got another question from Dawn.
Hi, Dawn.
Yeah, it was just a quick one. Obviously, you're dealing with men. You're talking about men with mental health problems. What about sort of going into schools or universities so you can actually get them talking earlier? I just wondering if that was part of your maybe plans for the future. Or
Yeah,
you
that's a
young men.
really good point. Yeah, I think like for me, the trigger point of this business and wanting to get started was the discrepancy within men's mental health. I'm not gonna discriminate between helping anyone, to be honest. And I think once that is happening, so once the business starts to get rolling and I've got more clients and that kind of thing, going into schools and stuff would be a really good idea. And I think there is, speaking to a few friends that are teachers, there is a bit more around kind of emotional intelligence and emotional side of things in primary schools now than there was when I was in school. So they're already kind of doing it. But yeah, I'd 100% get involved in that, given the opportunity.
Right, I think that's all the time that we have. Any more questions, guys? No, brilliant. Thanks very much again, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to talk to you all, and good luck with the rest of the course.
Is it okay to connect with you via LinkedIn as well if anyone wants
100%.
to?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Great. Thank you.
See you again soon.
Bye.
Bye. Right, guys. Shall we have a quick 15-minute break and then come back here by 15:15? Okay, thank you.